Hello, everybody. My name's Joel Filderman, and welcome to the Dog Trainers Connection. I'm not a dog trainer, but these other people you see here are. We get together, we discuss a topic, we come up with some thoughts, some ideas, and sometimes some solutions, but we always have an interesting conversation. Today's topic, well, it's getting to be that time of year again. It's when we're recording this today, it's December 10th. So that's coming up on December 25th, and we all know what that means. Santa Claus coming to town. And when he does, quite often, he'll bring a little puppy. And there are people who say that's a good thing. There are people who say that's a bad thing. And I'd like to know your opinions of it, trainers. So what do you think, Steve? Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing to give a puppy for a gift?
Well, we know that there are sure enough homeless dogs that could use the home.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have to say that getting a home trumps whatever time of the year it may be. It's more important that a dog get a home than necessarily worry about it on the holiday, except I've known folks that have given dogs, puppies, this kind of thing as a gift to somebody who didn't know they were going to become the recipient of
Wow.
it. Now that's not cool, like if you don't know you got a puppy coming and it really wasn't your idea, it's not like you had a chance to go and meet this puppy, it just sort of gets dropped in a box on you, I mean, that could be a little bit of a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So if you wanted to bring a dog in, it was your wish to bring a dog in, and it just so happens that it's this time of year and, well, you're going to be around, maybe you're off from work for a couple of weeks and kids are home from school, you have a little time to spend. Maybe it's not necessarily the worst time, in terms of timing, time spent with the new dog and things like that. So, it's a little both. Just how are you going about this? If you're going to bring a dog in the holidays, then you got to think about how the house, all the stuff in the house. So in the animal hospital, I mean, it's sort of busy between Christmas and New Year's with
Sure.
animals like ingesting things that they have no business having. But there's so much stuff around. How many Legos are on the floor if you got kids? And, then there's the stuff that hangs off the tree in terms of ornaments and tinsel, and all those things could be like seriously dangerous. And if you're bringing an animal in, and you are, maybe you're going to temper some of those decorations a little bit. But if it's just a shocking surprise, it's like, uh-oh, you're going to have a rough couple of weeks at the least. Also, I was thinking about this thing about senior pets, homeless senior pets.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get this idea. You probably think I'm crazy, but if a person adopts a pet that's 7 years or older from a shelter,
Mm-hmm.
then they know that they're buying into medical costs that they might not have if they were to get a younger dog.
Sure.
Shouldn't there be some sort of maybe financial help?
A fund?
Right. For the people that are seniors themselves,
Uh-huh.
that adopt senior animals over, let's say, 7, right? Because if you're a senior person and you really want to get a pet, it's probably a wise idea to get an older one, not a younger one, because I know for myself, I don't really want to be chasing a 12-week-old shepherd puppy around right about now. I know it would be challenging. A little Cavalier pup might be okay, but, whatever.
They're pretty quick, though.
They could be. They could be. So, I'm thinking senior people get senior animals, but senior people don't have oftentimes a lot of money laying around to be taking care of the health issues that are likely to become sooner than later in an older pet. I thought that maybe there would be, maybe it could be some sort of a marriage. Maybe in the holiday time would be a time for shelters to try and like push something like that, get it going so that they can maybe like, let's call it, I don't want to call it advertising, let's call it announcements that these kinds of things will be going on. If you're a senior citizen, you want to adopt a pet.
A promotion.
Promotion. That you're a little concerned about what the health costs may be in the future. We, the shelter, are putting together a system whereby, something like that. I think it would be good for the animals. It would be good for the old folks. And
Interesting.
I like that, Steve.
people
That's
give.
terrific.
Christmas time, it's give, 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 right? Isn't
Yeah.
that's what we said for Thanksgiving? Turkey, give, give, give.
Hmm.
So I think if they can get people at a time like this, open up their hearts and their wallet a little bit to help those senior animals, I think that would be
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. And just, I just thought extending on that, the medical care in the future, but maybe even training and back up. The person calls, hey, the dog just did so and so. They get someone to come to their house, or they bring the dog to the shelter, and they get to have a session with somebody
Yeah,
about
yeah, yeah.
addressing the issues.
I think that's a great
So
idea.
support in that too.
Sure.
That's a great idea.
And I really love that idea. And you know what you were saying about, I was telling Joel before we started that I've never had a client that with a puppy that they particularly got it for Christmas or over the Christmas holidays. But I really can relate to what you said, Steve, about giving a gift to somebody that didn't expect it, because a friend of mine, no, a really close friend of mine gave me as the dog trainer as the gift to a friend of hers that had a very aggressive Chihuahua.
Right. Yeah.
And her friend wasn't appreciative of that gift.
Oh,
It was like, you know, I didn't I didn't hire this trainer myself, and this is my gift is
you're
hiring
stuck in the
Bonnie
middle.
for 3 sessions. And so it was a little, we worked it out, but it's like, you know, that kind of gift is, dogs are, you know, like they're children. So
Exactly.
you can't just give a trainer as a gift without the person saying, yeah, that's a great idea. I could use the help, and I appreciate you putting the money out for that.
Yeah.
So
I mean, my
Yeah.
thoughts go to, I believe, and probably Steve, you know better than I do, that the period between Christmas and New Year's is one of the biggest surrenders to shelters. I remember reading that somewhere, that is one of the biggest times when people bring dogs in. So part of my thought with that is, in regards to what we're talking about, is how much of that is young dogs and how much of that is older dogs? How much of that is people going, oh, I really want a dog, and they get the dog, and then they go, well, yeah, no, I didn't really want this dog. Is it the whole thing of what we think of, where, you know, mommy and daddy give the kid the little puppy, and then they realize that that's way too much, so they bring it back to the shelter? Or is it, it's Christmas time, let me be generous and go adopt a dog, and then realize, nah, this probably is not for me?
I think it could be a little bit of both. I think
Yeah.
a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think sometimes too is one thing to get a puppy. You know, it can be done the right way, like Steve was saying, but oftentimes too, it's one thing to get a puppy around the holidays when it's very chaotic and you got Christmas ornaments, etc. around, so there's dangers there.
Sure.
But then that sometimes just picking out a puppy is based on its cuteness.
Mm-hmm.
Not on it's going to get a big, large dog or whatever it might be, and
Yeah.
the child might be scared.
good point.
Then what do you do? You know, then you got to hire one of us or something like that to work through that.
Right.
And you know, oftentimes with that chaos of people coming and going throughout the house and so forth, and it's not fair to the dog. The dog is just being uprooted in a roundabout way, and getting all this stress, you know, and all this chaos, and
Yeah.
it's overwhelming. It's, you know, the flooding, if you will, as we say. So yeah, if you could do onesies, twosies, that's one thing. So it can, like you're saying, Steve, it can be done right. You know, if you get a couple of weeks off, and you know you can, you know, you're not much into celebrating, or maybe you are, but you know, I should tone it down. Then it can be done right. You know, that
What about the other part of Joel's thing, which is like the expectation, you know, for parents oftentimes, I mean, I know this because, you know, I was that same kid, you know, it's like, can you get me a dog?
Sure.
Right? Can you get me a dog? You know, and every kid says, you know, if you get me a dog, I'll do everything.
I'll take care of you.
I'll do everything.
oh, that's yeah.
And then, you know, that lasts about like 2 hours, and then the parents are doing everything.
Minutes, but anyway, yeah.
But I think that, you know, I don't want to make it a normal, abnormal thing. It should maybe I don't know what to make it, but I know that there are some parents that honestly, the kid they get the dog, but the kid is held accountable. So when I was working in an animal hospital, I will never forget this so long as I live. This kid comes in with the dog, and the doctors got the dog on the table. I forget, it might have been an ear infection, nothing crazy, right?
Yeah.
We've got to knock the dog out. We've got to flush the ears out, blah, blah, blah. And the kid says, well, how much will that cost? And the kid must have been about 9 or 10 years old. And he walked to the animal hospital because he lived in town. And he brought his dog on a leash, right? And he says to the doctor, like a dog, how much will that cost? And the doctor says, no worries, I'll call your folks right now and I'll clear that. And he says, no, it's my responsibility. I have to pay for it. That was the agreement. And the doctor looks at him and says, this is going to cost more than I'm pretty sure you can afford. I really do need to speak to your parents. And I could see the look on the kid's face, like he was nervous.
The panic.
Because he's afraid that he's going to have to return, give the dog away because he can't live up to that agreement. How could he possibly? He doesn't have a job. He's a kid, So, I've actually seen that live with my own eyes, which was like hurtful to look at that. I had amazing respect for that little kid because he would do anything to work it out for his dog, which, he's the kind of human being I love. But his folks, I think, who I don't really know, I just think that they were way over the top with this. And I think that your average family bringing a dog in for a kid better know that the adults are going to be the ones with the responsibility at the end of the day, no matter what the kids asked for, no matter how you broke down and said, okay, fine, I'll get you a dog. But you better know it's on you. It's not on the kid. Because if it's a puppy, you got vaccines and eventually you're going to get into sterilization. And if, God forbid, there's a problem, costs all kinds of money that a kid just doesn't have. And if a parent, and what about the people that want to go away on the holidays? They already have a dog, but they're really not dog people. They shouldn't have had one in the first place. And they want to go on a trip. So they start calling around to find out how much does it cost to board the dog. We're going to be away for 2 weeks. How much is boarding? What do you think the average day board costs nowadays? Let's take a guess. What do you think, Dave?
Average day board, $30, $40,
50.
Really?
Day board?
Yeah, per day.
Day board.
150.
Oh, maybe it is 50. Yeah.
Well, depends probably on the size.
On location too, but
Right. So you go to a commercial kennel, let's say, some big commercial kennel. If you got a small breed dog, probably costs a little less. Maybe the space the dog takes up is a little less. Then, of course, there's ancillary services that you can get, like you have your dog walked every day. That costs
an extra
extra
walk.
if it's going to have a bath before it comes home. That's going to cost. So at the end, if you're going away for 2 weeks, it's the money you're spending on vacation has just increased twofold because of the
actually, I'm thinking of dog walking 30. Actually, on reflection, it's going to be more than triple that probably, if not more. And
if you want to put it in somebody's house, right? A real private situation, it can cost that much more.
Joel and I have a lot of experience with that.
Okay,
we always hired people to stay over and
walk.
It was the cost of the vacation.
Yeah.
You're right.
And then on top of that, then you're doing a screening process. But what kind of a screening process can you do? You're leaving in a week or two, and you call a couple of different people. You don't know what you're looking at. Oh, this person sounds reasonable. The price is right. And it might not be the right place for the dog. The dog might not get any kind of stimulation there. It might just be sitting in a cage all day with no one coming in to pet it, or if it's pettable. Maybe the other dogs are barking. It's freaking it out. So maybe they don't have a place where they can kind of keep it aside away from other dogs, so it gets a little bit less less stress, that kind of thing. You don't ask these questions. It's
and you better ask them in July because you're not getting a space in Christmas.
That's true too. They could tell you what they want you to hear or whatever too.
Right?
And the other thing too about getting a pet when on a holiday, say a Christmas, if it's 2 weeks maybe that your kids are off, and then you go back to work, your kids go back to school, and then the dog's left alone, and
you've got the problem with the dog barking or separation anxiety
coming in.
Or the dog just getting so nervous that it becomes aggressive. It's like
So here are the reasons, Joel, you asked. Why would they surrender at this time of year?
Mhm.
There's a whole bunch of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what they say with shelters. A lot of those dogs that come out of there have the separation anxiety. So, putting them in a boarding trainers, boarding for that matter, is in a roundabout way like a temporary shelter, if you will.
Yeah.
So
It is. You're right. Wow.
Yeah, it's rough. So, I mean, look, I would say that unless you're really prepared, you should never get a dog. I don't care if it's a holiday or not, if you're not like really like prepared. And I mean, I don't know about your clients, but mine always say, I did the research. I did the research. I did the research. And they have breeds that they have no idea what to expect of some purebred dogs that they paid a lot of money for, that they claim they did the research on. But they don't necessarily, they're not ready. They're really not ready because they just didn't, they didn't do enough, or they didn't do independent research. There's that Daniel Tortora book, which I still love to this day. It's old. It's an oldie but goodie called The Right Dog for You. You remember that one, Bon?
Yes, I do.
And this guy looks at the breeds from a very neutral perspective. He's not a breeder.
Takes the emotion out of it and just looks at it as realistic.
And from his experience, and he actually looks at all the behavioral dimensions. And if you looked at poodle, let's say toy poodle, you'll have one page that says well-bred toy poodle. Yeah. And on the next page, it'll say puppy mill toy poodle.
Oh, wow.
And it'll give you those different dimensions based on well-bred or not so well-bred. And a fascinating book, but it's not a Samoyed breeder writing a book on Samoyed.
Sure.
It's the greatest breed ever lived. They're not going to talk about how some like to bark.
Well, having one as a kid, I can tell you that they were. But anyway.
It's a funny thing. It's a funny thing.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, and unfortunately, when we get the calls, it's not like, we're thinking of getting a dog. We just wanted to get your opinion and what we should do about it.
That's the thing.
You don't get calls like that. It's like, we just picked up the dog a week ago or a couple of days ago, or we're about to pick up. We're gonna pick up the dog, or we have it. We had it for a week, but now it's doing this, that, and the other. We need a dog trainer. It's driving us crazy or whatever. So they're in the middle. You can't say, well, maybe I wouldn't advise you getting it right around now if they're thinking about getting it in a week or two. How do you say that? It's a little awkward. You can, but obviously, it's I mean, it's
well.
You disappoint their child or something potentially, or whatever. So,
but if you're disappointing their child so that they're not going to have problems in the future,
right? They don't. Correct. Unfortunately, they don't necessarily see it that way.
I'm not saying that they're going to see it that way.
Right, but you're 100% correct.
Yeah. Get a fish. Get a fish.
Get a fish. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Get a fish. It doesn't have to be nothing.
Right.
Well, Steve, have you ever told a client, at risk of them not hiring you because you're not going along with their plan or what they want, do not get that dog? That's the wrong breed for you? Or did you research the line of the dog, and how do you know it's...
I've been in so much trouble, Bonnie. I'm surprised there's not a wanted poster out for me. I'm telling you, I thought my face was hanging in the post office over a couple. No, because, I'm not afraid to say.
You will tell them.
Oh, boy, do I tell.
Because you don't want to face the consequences.
Well, because I think that, if I don't tell, why should it be a surprise to them later?
Yeah.
And
or them to face the consequences. I guess that's a better way of putting it.
And I tell them, look, I don't have a crystal ball. I've seen everything. I have seen everything. I have seen the worst, apparently the worst dogs in the world turn into some real stellar individuals. And I've seen some really sort of nice, what I would say, well put together puppies turn into lunatics. So, you can look at a breed and you can say, well, this breed typically behaves this way, but that doesn't mean this dog will. But I think that they need to know what the breed standard should be bringing their way in case it does come their way. They should be prepared for that. Now, if they don't like what the breed standard says, then they made a mistake. So you can't take your border terrier to the dog park in the city because he's going to rough it up in there. Then you can't be mad at the dog. I mean, you went and got yourself a terrier type dog. They rough it up. I mean, that's what they do. You could do all you want to try to make it your way, but that's not really fair to dogs. Not allowing them to present their own character. It's like ridiculous. It's just not going to work out. It's just conflict. It makes no sense at all. So I smacked my mic, sorry.
Mm.
So yeah, so I do tell, and I've had people get mad at me, and I've definitely lost clients. I've lost clients over telling people I don't like body harnesses on dogs.
Mm-hmm.
I've lost them like on the phone. It's like, so what do you use in terms of equipment? I'm like, I use a plain flat buckle collar and a leash. That's basically it. If you have a brachiocephalic dog, then I want it in a harness. Otherwise, I prefer a collar. Oh no, but I have a Dalmatian and it wears a harness. So I'm like, well, that doesn't really work for me. I would suggest, and then I get the, I don't think you're right for me kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, nice talking to you. See you. And I'm not offended by that. I mean, people
different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, they've got to find who they're comfortable with, because they're not going to listen to anybody that they're not comfortable with.
Yeah, of course.
They have to do that. But at the same time, I need to also be upfront about, what I think. If you're going to hire me to help you, then, we sort of should think alike a little bit.
Yeah, what I'll do oftentimes is I'll say, listen, I know, let's say it's around the holidays like we're talking about. I say, I generally don't recommend getting a puppy around the holidays for various reasons. But if you really want to do it and you really want to do it the right way, these are my suggestions. Mm-hmm. Whether they take those suggestions or not, obviously it's on them. And if there's a problem, it's like, hey, listen, well, I told you so. I'm not going to tell them, remind them, but it's like, they have that thought in their mind, like, hey.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Steve, those people, even if they hire a trainer, that if they're not willing to just try the buckle collar with working with you, then even if they get a trainer who says, oh, that's fine, the harness is fine, those kind of people probably aren't going to listen to that trainer either, because they're closed-minded.
Well, they have their ideas, right? They have
their and they probably have their ideas about everything, and questioning, and why did I have to do that, and why are you telling me that, and oh no, I'd prefer not to do that.
But don't all clients?
You should. The client should be comfortable with what you're showing them. But in my mind, saying, "Oh, I'm not going to try a collar," and that the dog has to wear a harness is just kind of setting it up for the beginning that they're not open to you helping their dog, and their dog.
But if we take it to the next step, let's say, then let's talk about Pete Borchell doing a seminar for the Dog Trainers Connection in the city some years back when he talked about equipment. Remember that one?
The snoot loop.
Right. And so
2002 or 3, it was early in DTC's doing our events.
I sat there and I listened to this guy make all the sense in the world. And all he had to do was, do that for me and say, so who wears a harness? Right? Let's talk horses. Who wears a harness? Well, a horse that pulls
I remember this.
wagon or a cart or right? It's for drafting. Dogs. Who wears a harness? Sled dogs. Guide dogs, search and rescue dogs, the dogs that are supposed to be out in front, right? Because of the opposition reflex, when you pull back on them, they're comfortable and they'll pull ahead. And it makes all the sense in the world. He said, but if you wanted to ride a horse, would he be in a harness? How would you control the horse? Impossible. And that's when he went to the bridle. We control a large animal by the head because it's the weakest part of the animal. It makes it most easy for us to make control. And so, he made all the sense in the world about just the harness piece to me. I mean, look, if we want to talk about heel, I believe you train heel in the house with no leash at all. But, it's not about force. It's about no force, but it's about control. And I see a lot of dogs in harnesses that can scoff up nonsense off the gutter. You know what I mean? You have no control of the head and neck. And giving them the freedom to do that is like giving them freedom to misbehave, I think. And then you got to try and fix that later, or walk around with feeding them every 2 seconds just to keep them interested in. When if you even had just a buckle collar on the neck, you could probably at least control the dog a little bit better while you're trying to train it to behave appropriately. So, it's things like that. It's things like saying, well, I know you like the harness, but this is what I've learned about harnesses, right? And I would try and go there just to try and sort of patch up my side of the story a little bit. Not just Steve doesn't believe. I want to tell you why I think this way.
Of course.
how I've heard it, where I've learned it, and that
Yeah.
kind of thing. And that's why, I think we read a lot, dog trainers. And, I
Well,
think it's good to
Then
have
there's the
a
pros and cons of the front clip harness versus one on the chest, which is all
well,
you know.
Victoria Stillwell was at that workshop, Steve.
Was she?
Yes, she was. way back at the beginning of
It was a
her
good,
career.
it was a great one, as many of them were,
Yes, they
but that
were.
harness thing stuck, really stuck with me. I'm like, of course, it makes all the sense in the world, but it's
Well,
become a humane thing, it's harness.
but I want to ask you this, Steve. Have you ever also taken a client that maybe over the phone, they sounded like, that they had their own ideas and wouldn't go along with, but that you went anyway? And that in person, you were able to find out more about what their feelings were about it and what they were concerned about?
I think that most of the time on the phone, well, we know that what they believe they're seeing, their interpretation of what they're looking at is not always so. We show up to their house and they're like, you see, I mean, I've had happy dogs jumping around and like, he's going to attack, I'm like, no, he's happy now. They couldn't even read that, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So at this point in my career, if somebody calls me up and says the dog's aggressive, I'm probably not even going to bother going because I just don't want to get involved. But the truth is, a lot of those cases are probably not really aggressive dogs.
Mm-hmm.
It's the perception of the owner or how they're handling that moment or, stuff like that. I guess if I was 30 years younger, I'd still be going out and doing those, but,
Okay, yeah, right. Got
Well, as usual, we could continue this conversation for the next 3 hours. But first off, I think the idea of some sort of a fund to help people with adopting the dogs around this time is a great idea. And I hope that somebody watching this who can do something about that would do something about that. That'd be great. We would love that. But
and I was just going to say, and we would participate in it as well.
Oh, sure.
Helping with that.
Yeah. Yep. Before we close, I want to make an announcement to everybody watching this video. DTC is starting a new project in the new year. We are going to be starting pop-up webinars. And you, as somebody watching our DTC YouTube forum, the Dog Trainers Connection, you're going to know about them first because we're going to talk about them here. And so when you know about them, hopefully you'll show up. And what it is there's going to be a notice going out saying we're going to have somebody doing a short webinar, and it's up to them what they want to talk about, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So I hope that all you people who are watching it can be part of it. And our very own forum member, Steve Diller, is going to be doing the first one coming January. So look for that announcement. With that, we want to wish everybody the best of the holiday season, whatever holiday it is that you celebrate. And we will see you in the new year. So thank you for watching. Thank you for watching this last year. Thank you, panelists, for being here today and for being here always. And I look forward to seeing everybody in the new year. So take care, folks. Bye-bye.
Happy holidays.
Bye.
Happy holidays.
Happy
Healthy
holidays.
New Year's.
And Happy New Year. Yeah.